All right, everybody, we've got one more for today, and it is going to be a good one. Could be the finals of the tournament. Tatanka versus Melvinfro. Both kind of legendary names in the Tooth and Tail community. And let's see what happens here in this best of 3 to help determine who advances to the round of 16 out of group stage. All right, in the bottom, in the red, we've got Tatanka. And up top, in the blue, Melvinfro. All right, Tatanka going for the late game with this army comp, but Squirrel Pigeon Skunk is a fine early to mid game to kind of hold down the fort as you try to get into 16 farms and get into that double tier 3 Falcon. Meanwhile, Melvinfro also looks like a late game army build, but a little bit different of a composition. You know, rocking the Raccoon Snake. I personally haven't seen a lot of that this season, so I'm excited to see how Melvinfro wants to play this. What his answer is going to be to maybe some Squirrel Pigeon Skunk aggression. I think Raccoons can be the way to do that. I'm really excited about this. I love the Raccoon. I want to see more of it. I personally tried a lot last season to make it work, didn't have great success. But would love to take some notes here from Melvin and see how he utilizes this new unit against such a strong opponent like Tatanka. All right, so it is time to make our first decision. And looks like Tatanka thinking about double tiered. Okay, there's a farm double. Melvin verifies that and also has an 8 farm double. Pretty short rush distance map. Both of these players want to macro. That doesn't mean they can't play early game, but I think just generally when you get to like some of the best players in the game, they like to macro up. They like to get their army comp, kind of win in that fashion that Big Pimpintosh won earlier today, where you know maybe you don't really win through engagements, but you kind of win through getting a more well-rounded composition. You know, kind of macroing up a little bit more efficiently than your opponent. So let's see. Tatanka really trying to be annoying to Melvin. Prevent his commander from burrowing home. And we see the Falcon come out of Melvinfro first, which is, to me, an odd one. I mean, Melvinfro's one of the best players of the game, so he knows what he's doing. But I don't personally see Falcon as like an early tier 2. I see it as more of a late game scaling unit. But you definitely can have a lot of success with Falcons. Look at this, Melvinfro double Falcon against Skunk Falcon from Tatanka. So you just get so much burst out of 2 Falcons, you really do. Melvin gonna get a nice deep scout. Tatanka, same. Everybody knows exactly what they're doing. Pretty similar openings here. Melvin even gonna stick around and get that follow-up scout. Pretty smart idea since you've already got the 2 tier 2. You're spending your money without having to do anything. So you might as well just double check your opponent's not selling anything, trying to pull the rug out from under you. So actually that right there was an incredible move from Melvinfro. Melvin does take the mill first. Tatanka follows suit though. It's about the 3-minute mark, so they're both deciding, okay, we gotta get that second base going or we're just gonna start starving. Melvin though sells the mill, builds more Warrens. Okay, this is really scary for and then builds a mill again, deciding if he wants to 1 base all in or not. Kind of keeping Tatanka guessing. So since he bought the mill again, I feel like that was bad for him though, especially because he didn't... Like, it would have been one thing if he was giving wrong information to Tatanka, but Tatanka did see the mill. But Tatanka being careful, not building any farms yet. And double checking the mill, that's really what's important right now. You can get a lot of information by just scouting that second base and seeing how many farms you've got. Alright, so Melvin deciding to push in does technically have a little bit stronger of an army advantage, but who's got the better army comp? Melvin pulling back, he's not as confident anymore, he loses a couple Falcons, retreating in Tooth and Tail could be very dangerous. Melvin losing a couple units there on the back end, but not losing too many. The Skunk push is coming in, there's some Pigeons here to support. Melvin target firing down with his Falcon, is able to get rid of the enemy Falcons, but the Skunks on the ground are still here. They're dealing a lot of damage to the tier 1 of Melvin. Melvin trying to chase, trying to get one more Skunk on the back end, but I don't think he's going to, and I think that was a better fight for Tatanka. Yeah, not being able to kill that, keeping that Skunk alive was absolutely huge. Now Melvin's overextending with these squirrels, and that might be game. Those 6 Pigeons Also really kind of hurting in the early game. They're not like actual units that have guns that can shoot people. But Tatanka not going to push the issue. Tatanka looking in a great spot here. Keeping those two skunks alive was absolutely huge. Melvin overextended a little bit with the squirrels. And Tatanka also has the income advantage from throwing that one farm down a little bit faster. And that really matters now that we're past the 5-minute mark. It's 5 farms versus 4, which is a larger ratio if you were a fan of math than 8 versus 9. Melvin's got to engage. He doesn't really have a choice. Now, the skunks were a little bit far forward, so the Falcon was able to burst one of them down. Keeping these Falcons alive is very important for Melvin. Falcons are a really interesting unit that, you know, you lose too many units that can shoot up, all of a sudden they're scaling too far, but that's going to be it. Melvin about to tap out here. GG. Tatanka takes a very close game number 1. Okay, so maybe I'm not crazy, because I do feel like the skunk was a better first tier 2 than the Falcons were. Is that really... I guess... I'm trying to think why that game... I think the big thing was Tatanka killed the 4 tier 2, Melvin did not. But then Melvin chased the skunks back, lost a lot of squirrels doing that, and still wasn't able to kill the skunk. He was 1 shot away. I think that's really where the game got decided. That plus Tatanka actually keeping that extra farm. And then also Melvin moved out against the second base and kind of changed his mind and retreated. So that was kind of bad for him. So I think it was those few things combined. Okay, Sasha in the chat tends to agree with me, saying going 4 Falcons instead of 2 Falcon, 2 Raccoon, or even 4 Raccoon was weird. Okay. Yeah, I agree. I think that the Raccoon versus Skunk, you can be in a good shape. In the bottom right, we've got Melvinfro, and over on the left-hand side, Tatanka. The only thing you want to be afraid of with Raccoon is Chameleon, right? I mean, other than that, Raccoon, I think, is pretty good against most other tier 2. Like, 9 Squirrel, 2 Skunk, versus 9 Squirrel, 2 Raccoon. I think that could go either way, right? Anyway, let's see what the choices are in this game a little bit. Again, I mean, these maps look like macro maps, but actually, you know what? There's no... That bush is blocking. There's a cabin here. All the road, though. This map looks bigger than it is. I think that this could be an aggressive map. This is kind of a bad... That's a really bad expansion for Airlu. Yeah, I think this is gonna be an aggressive game. Or Airlu, Tatanka. What am I thinking? So why is this gonna be an aggressive game? I think that, for one, even though the map kind of looks big, there's a lot of road, so the attack path is pretty quick. This is a terrible base for Tatanka because the edge harass, like Melvinfro could just walk his units right here and attack that. And look at how awkward it would be for Tatanka to try to defend that. You have to come all the way around. There's no way to get there any quicker. It looks like Tatanka's going to take it anyways. But that looks really abusable. Melvin's got the better second base here, so I'm kind of surprised Tatanka is taking the initiative on macroing up. Because he could have, like, he could have waited till Melvin took this mill and then tried to punish it. I don't know. I think that's maybe the more of the direction I would go in. Obviously, these guys are way better than I am, though. So, yeah, Tatanka just being a little bit aggressive. Maybe he's thinking, with how weird... This is a very defendable spot for Melvinfro to try to attack through, especially with skunks. So maybe Tatanka's thinking, you know, I can bait Melvin into weird attacks based on the architecture of the map. You know, I can play this macro game, get ahead. But Melvin is kind of following suit. And this is scary, I think, for Airlu. Because, again, I mean, you know, how easy is it going to be for Melvin to just cliff harass this base? But right now, Tatanka does have the better build order. I would like to see Melvinfro win this game so we get a match number 3. Just throwing my caster bias out there. But this is about the type of tooth and tail I'm expecting to see out of these two players. They both just want to cautiously macro up and get to 16 farms, get into their tier 3, and then start playing the theory of I'm putting together a better army composition than you. Which, I don't know, man. I mean, last finals, we did see how effective Wolf Snake was. And that's kind of what Melvinfro's got going here. I think Wolf Raccoon is also a very good comp. So I think Melvinfro's army is going to scale quite nicely. It's really going to come down to the Badger, right? Like, can Tatanka play the Badger correctly? Here comes a Badger. So, really important scout from Melvin. Gonna see it immediately. And I think Melvin just has to respond by throwing down his Wolf. I don't think you try to punish your opponent for building the Badger. Yeah, there we go. So we will see the theory behind both these players' late-game army compositions come to fruition. I'm very excited for this. I'm kind of rooting for Melvinfro's army, just to be honest, like, because I want Raccoon to be a competitive unit. I really do. But I don't know, man. It's really interesting because with this like Wolf style, you know, Tatanka, like neither one of them is actually able to babysit their Wolf when we get into the big engagement, because Tatanka's got to be controlling his Badger, and Melvinfro's got to be controlling his Snakes, right? So really what this comes down to is Melvin trying to get the Snake tags on the Badger, Tatanka trying to keep the Badger safe but effective, revved up, dealing a lot of damage. I wouldn't even be surprised to see Tatanka try to go into multiple Badgers. I think 2 Badgers is a great counter to Snake, where it's like, cool, you got one of them, there's still another one to deal with. And I'm excited for this. Both players are kind of allowed to get into the army that they want. I would like to see getting into more 16 farms here. Neither side really feeling safe enough. Okay, Melvin should have seen the double. Yeah, okay, now you gotta get into 16 farms, brother. No? Even after seeing the double tier 3. There we go. So yeah, I mean, the Snakes plus the Raccoon Burst plus the Falcons, wow. I'm so surprised to see both these players not just get their 16 farms up. Like, you know that we're going to sit around and wait for our army comps. Very interesting here. Maybe it's a situation where both players are like, I don't want to be the one caught with the 180 less food. But I feel like those farms would have paid for themselves by now. Now it gets into a really awkward spot to take those farms, right? Because, like, the attack's about to happen. Alright, Tatanka wants to get that buff on the Badger, which can be a little difficult when there's so many units around. The Wolf's just gonna buff whoever he wants, unless you move the Badger and the Wolf away from everybody else. You should probably do that before the big engagement. I don't know if that's even correct, though. Maybe you want the Wolf buff on the Falcons. Okay, Melvin is gonna commit to those extra farms now, but again, now I think it's a dangerous time to do it, because that's just like extra food missing from your army for the big attack. Tatanka is on the offense, which means he might pick out a Pig, might pick out a Warren during this. Melvinfro does have that defender's advantage, going to get his units re-rallied a little bit faster. This is tough. Both players really want to find the right engagement. This is definitely going to be a, you know, this engagement is probably going to dictate the rest of the game. Tatanka's army in a really good spot behind this mill, just going to make the pathing kind of weird for Melvinfro. Both players throwing down some gas, a little bit more gas damage from Tatanka here. Alright, Melvin trying to pull Tatanka's army forward. Here we go. The Badger does have 3 stacks of poison on it. And the Badger is going to go down, but doesn't do enough damage. Oh my god, the Badger just shreds through the army of Melvinfro. And that is going to be a quick 2-0, I believe, here from Tatanka. There's nothing you can do about that now. And we saw, even though the Snakes got their job done, the Wolf buff Badger, just so much damage, just absolutely shredded through the opponent's army. So there we go, GG.